For the latest, we're joined by correspondent Iris Mockler in Jerusalem and by Jonathan Conricus, former spokesperson for the Israeli Defense Forces. Iris, we know a bigger rally's planned for later. What's the latest?
I'm now at a protest, one of the many, in fact dozens, organised across the country today. This one in Jerusalem was quite quiet when I got here, but is very noisy now. They're planning to go from here to the home of the Prime Minister and then up to the President's residence. There's some discussion with the police about whether they will be allowed to do that. And it's part of the ongoing response of Middle Israel, I guess you'd call it, the people who did not vote for this government and who are very worried about what the changes in the oversight laws for the Supreme Court mean for Israel's democracy.
Do these protests have the same feel that previous ones have had, or is it different this time?
I think, someone, to use a military analogy, said there was a ceasefire, there was a pause, and now the ceasefire is over and both teams are back on the battle lines. So last night the government threw down the gauntlet and said, we're going ahead with this law, we're doing it piecemeal, we've learnt our lesson from last time as the Justice Minister conceded, so it's going to be done in pieces, but it's going to be done. That's the message that people here have taken, and they're as determined as they were before, and if possible even angrier, I would say.
Jonathan Conricus, is Israel's democracy under threat?
I would say that many Israelis definitely think so. Many Israelis probably are confused by the situation, and many believe that it isn't, and that what the government is doing is trying to fix. I think that's the three main parts of the Israeli population. Today we see many Israeli patriots out and demonstrating on the streets, voicing their concern for what's going on. And I think that if we look ahead, it seems as if there's big events lined up for this evening and probably more demonstrations to come in the following days if there aren't really political changes, or, to use your correspondent's terminology, military terminology, another ceasefire, another halt or cessation of the legislation efforts.
Was this avoidable?
It definitely is. And I think that many in the defense establishment and many others are looking, their eyes are set on the government, asking them to, go into some kind of meaningful dialogue with opposition legislators, listen to the concerns of many in society, and at least put a temporary halt on the legislation, which we can see brings out a lot of very strong emotions in Israel. And my concern personally is, this is all part of a democratic society. I'm very happy that people are out demonstrating for what they believe. But I am concerned when it spills over into the military, because unlike so many other countries, democracies in the world, Israel is under threat, and we need a strong, coherent, and well-functioning regular military as well as reserves. And what we see now happening is that these events and legislation and the protest against legislations are really influencing the defense establishment and putting a question mark above or besides the ability of the IDF to mobilize troops if and when necessary. And I think that is a dangerous thing that the government, first and foremost, needs to be very, very careful not to jeopardize.
Yeah, Jonathan, many of those reservists too threatening to no longer serve as a result of this overhaul. What are they telling you, and what have you answered them?
What I think people are saying is that if this goes ahead, then if the legislation or part of it goes ahead, that will be a substantial breach of the agreement between people serving in the military, reserves or regular, who are willing to risk their life and do it for their country, really breaking that bond or the agreement between people willing to serve and the state for which they are serving. And many people feel very strongly about that. And I really hope that, the government will listen. I think that there is room for compromise here. On one hand, adjust the legal system so that all of Israel, or the vast majority of Israel, feels that it is inclusive and representative of the majority and most of the people in Israel. And I think that there is room for corrections there. But then on the other hand, do it in such a way that doesn't look, feel, or smell as if Israel will be going towards a totalitarian or semi-democratic state. I think that the government bears ultimate responsibility to do that and to make sure that Israel remains democratic and to do it in an inclusive way to get people on board and not to have the sides that we see now. And my fear and many other Israelis fear that this is only the beginning of what could be violent and a dangerous situation.
Could be violent.
Yes, I mean, I'm not sure that we're looking at Parisian scenarios or really big violent clashes between police and demonstrators. That's not Israeli style, and that isn't the norm, and that's not what we've seen in the last half year of demonstrations. But that is definitely something that I know police are concerned with, legislators are speaking about it, and of course media is doing its part in telling the story of what's happening and perhaps adding a bit of emotion to it. But that is definitely a fear, and I think that at the end of the day, the government bears responsibility of preventing that, getting people to listening to others with other points of view, and executing its mandate, but doing it in a smart and inclusive way.
Jonathan Conricus, many thanks for speaking with us.